What an absolutely riveting day's cricket that was. What a riveting test match, all in all. Australia firm favourites going into the start of day 5. But you had Rishabh Pant with a blistering knock and a very defiant innings from Cheteshwar Pujara that actually swung the match in India's favour and gave India a glimmer of hope of winning the test match, let alone drawing it. But then you had two wickets falling in quick succession, which again swung the pendulum in Australia's favour. But ultimately, it was Ravichandra Ashwin and Hanuma Vihari playing innings that were characterized by grit, passion, perseverance, and character. Ayaz Memon joins me for this episode of Cricket Pundits as we look back on everything that transpired in Sydney. Ayaz, it was edge of the seat action from start to finish, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. I think this is one of the greatest test matches that I've seen, and we've all seen it on the television, not there. And that's my regret because of COVID-19. Otherwise, one could have been at Sydney. So while there was no result, this was a match with full of replete with great drama, the highs and lows, the resurrection of Steve Smith, the blistering knock, as you mentioned, of Rishabh Pant, the coming to form of Cheteshwar Pujara, and now he's such a potent threat going into the fourth test, and of course the lion-hearted resistance of Hanuma Vihari and Ravichandran Ashwin batting almost 44 overs on the last day of the test match to save the match. This was a match-saving partnership. But it was not one of those draws which you discuss. Match save kar liya and it's come easily. This was made under enormous pressure, with your top order gone, with two batsmen injured, Jadeja not available to play, only under absolute compulsion, and so on and so forth. And remember, this is still not the full-strength Indian team. There's no Virat Kohli, there's no Mohammad Shami, there's no Umesh Yadav, there's no Jadeja bowling. To get under the skin of the Aussies and come up with such a performance, is something stellar. The resources thinning, but the gumption and the character coming across. You don't want to. This is a team which is not giving up easily. This is the biggest exhibition of that.
I'm so glad that you actually used the word character. Ajinkya Rahane in the post-match presentation used the word character as well. We spoke a lot about character in the aftermath of the second test match, the way India bounced back after the 36 all-out debacle that took place in the first test match. Speak to me a bit more about the character that India showed in this test match. They showed as much character in this test match, if not more, compared to how much character they showed in the second test match, didn't they?
Well, I think, look, the show of character is actually growing from day to day and match to match. So after the debacle, as you mentioned in Adelaide Gate, they're getting bowled out for 36, then losing Shami and Virat, and then to come back and win the next match by an equal margin as the first test match. It was tit for tat. We won the match by 8 wickets. It was a great show of character, and I think that this was an even greater show because everything was ranged against you. In Melbourne, where we won, we came back very strongly, but we were always on top of the Aussies. Here, almost every session was won by the Australians leading up to the last day, and I think even the first session in a way, because Rahane fell so early on the 5th day. And then to go on and save this match, Herculean effort, and Herculean and heroic. That's why it's Herculean. It's heroic. But I'm just saying that it shows to me that a lot of people thought that this team, after the first test match defeat, would completely kind of be flattened, rolled over by the Aussies. It'll be like a steamroller over the team, and we might end up losing 4-0. I think going into the last test match, Anubhav, while India will have even thinner resources because we don't know what team will play. They're really struggling to put together a 11 which can compete. But the moral victory today was India's, though the match was drawn. And I think Australia have hit a psychological hurdle. They don't know how to get past, these very resilient, very dheet, cussed Indian players. What we call dheet in India, very obstinate. They're very stubborn, whether it's a Vihari or it's even a Bumrah or certainly an Ashwin, who was a revelation today. He's made 400s in his test career, but he hasn't played a better knock than what he did today. So I think from Rohit and Gill hitting it off as an opening pair, then runs for Cheteshwar Pujara. These are all the plus points. There are also the handicaps. Jadeja will not be there. You're missing perhaps not perhaps, certainly your best fielder, and also somebody who was batting extremely well lower in the lower order. But what India has got working for it is enormous, tremendous self belief.
Absolutely, and you saw the Aussies, especially Tim Payne, quite flustered towards the fag end of the innings. Tell me a bit about India's move of sending Rishabh Pant up the order. It's one of those, when it works, you call it genius. When it doesn't, you call it stupidity. But fortunately, as Indian fans, it definitely did pay off. And India, at one stage, seemed as if India might even end up winning the match, let alone
Yeah.
let alone saving it.
Yes, I think it, I mean, as you mentioned, that when it works, it's a stroke of genius, and it turned out to be in that sense. I think the effort was the thinking may have been, if you don't score runs at all, because remember the batsman at the other end was not Rahane, it was Pujara, and Pujara
Right.
takes his time to get going, or at least in this innings, it was not important to get going. It was important to hold one end up completely.
Absolutely.
But if you do that from both ends, then you're going to just pile on the pressure on yourself. So I
Mhm.
thought the idea to send Pant was, he'll get cracking maybe with a few hits here and there, and somewhere at the back of their minds must have been, "ठीक है यार, if it means loss, at least let's go down fighting. Let's go down by, dying by the sword rather than
Absolutely.
just kind of succumbing without doing anything." I think that may have been the
Absolutely.
thought process. And he actually got off to a very sluggish start. If
Absolutely. He was
five
5 of
runs of 34,
34.
5 from 34, and then he just cut loose. And how? He just got after the pace bowler, the spinner, Nathan Lyon. He actually disrupted Nathan Lyon's rhythm. Lyon, of course, unlucky because Tim Payne put down a couple of
Mhm.
catches early on, but that's the rub of the green which India got. And, fortune favors the brave. So he took his chances. He got a couple of lives, but then he just turned the heat on the Australian fielders and bowlers across the board, whether it was Hazelwood or Cummins or Stark. It didn't make a difference to Pant. And he was going at breakneck speed, so much so that it looked like this match would be turned around on its head, and India might end up winning with a couple of overs to spare rather than, trying to save the match. It didn't happen, but, unfortunate not to get 100, but, that's how it goes. All said and done, heroic. No, I want heroic effort. But the point I want to make here about Pant is that he's obviously got the X factor in him, and there's been so much discussion about his wicket keeping, and quite rightly, because he doesn't have the finesse that, say, a Saha has or some of the other wicket keepers have. Now, if he sees himself as only as a batsman, that's fine. He could perhaps find a place in the team only as a batsman. But if he ups his wicket keeping performance by 15, 12, 15%, he could have similar influence on contemporary cricket as Adam Gilchrist had, in his era. Now, this is a big
Mhm.
statement to make, I know.
Absolutely.
And I want to qualify it here with the statement that, look, Adam Gilchrist played his first test match, I think, when he was 28 or 29. He was kept out of the team. So he had a lot of first class experience under his belt. Wicket keepers generally mature with age. They get better and better and better. It's very unusual to find 21-year-old prodigies who are wicket keepers.
Mhm.
So I the specialist wicket keepers generally will get blooded when they're 25, 26, having played a lot of first class cricket, kept to fast bowlers and spinners, etc. Now everything is getting fast tracked, especially in Indian cricket. So here we have
Mhm.
Pant also right in the thick of it. But I think that if he ups his wicket keeping excellence, then he could become, major influence, and then who will even think of, he'll become a certainty for any format.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as we've spoken a fair bit about Rishabh Pant, I want to briefly speak about Cheteshwar Pujara. After the first innings, he scored his slowest 50. I think he scored 50 of 173, 174 balls. He actually came under a lot of criticism. Ricky Ponting was leading that criticism brigade, talked about the fact that, his slow innings was actually putting a lot of pressure on some of the other players who had to fire, who had to, strike at a much faster rate. But in this innings, given the situation that India found itself in, you were begging Pujara to actually play his natural game, to be there, to be that wall, to be that anchor, to
Yeah.
safeguard that innings, and just play out the 50, 60 overs that were there. What did you make of Pujara's approach in the first innings? Do you think he should stick to his natural game because that's what suits him best, as opposed to tinkering too much with the way he likes to play?
So this is a complex question, and there's no easy answer. I think that, look, At the end of the day, you have to play what comes to you naturally. That's
Mhm.
true. But it was also situational, and especially for somebody who's been around for 7, 8 years, you have to assess the situation and see what best works for your team at that point in time. So the batting today was had to be dour and grim and nose to the grind kind of batting.
Mhm.
In the first innings, it could have been a little different. You know, you need to rotate the strike. You need to ensure that you don't get bogged down. The other partner doesn't get bogged down. So what we have seen of Pujara over the last maybe 6, 7, 8 years is that as his innings grows longer, the strike rate also improves. So
That's
one,
right.
he's slow to start off with. He digs himself in, and then he starts opening up. And the way he played Lions today was, I think, fantastic because in the earlier two matches, Lion was his bugbear. He was,
Right. Right.
troubling him no end. So he was using his feet, and the most difficult thing to do, and this is something that I think we need to admire in players like in Pujara, certainly, is that he's a senior member of the team, one of the more stellar players, and somebody like a Pant comes and starts playing his strokes. He immediately reconciled himself to playing second fiddle.
Mhm.
He's not playing second fiddle to a Rohit Sharma or a Virat Kohli or even an Ajinkya Rahane. He's playing second fiddle and then to Pant, and then also helping him along, you know. And he started also showing a little more intent in running between the wickets, not taking
Right.
pointless risks, but realizing that if you keep the scoreboard moving, these guys are getting more and more, losing their own kind of equilibrium and rhythm, the Aussies. So I thought this was a fantastic innings by Pujara, and he's approaching the best form that he showed in 2018 in Australia,
Mhm.
when he made hundreds. Remember, the second half of almost all those innings, when he made those runs, 500 runs, the second half was made very fluently.
That's right.
He would start off slowly, and then so he's not had a very big innings so far in the series till this match, and he was looking extremely good in the second innings, I thought.
Absolutely. Ayaz, a word on the innings that were played by Ravichandra Ashwin and Hanuma Vihari. Hanuma Vihari, of course, hamstrung. So playing in dire circumstances, you could see he couldn't run. He was writhing in pain. And Ravichandra Ashwin, honestly, when I was watching him bat, it seemed to me as if he's a
Amazing.
he's a classic Test match batsman, especially the way he played Nathan Lyon as well as the fast bowlers like Pat Cummins, Mitchell Stark, who were bowling with so much hostility. So a word on the way you interpreted their batting.
So I think both. I mean, somebody like Rahul Dravid and Cheteshwar Pujara would have been proud to have played this kind of a knock. Look at the circumstances. Bat out 44 overs, and they got peppered. There was a barrage of short pitch bowling. They got hit on the hand, on the chest, etc. Ashwin took a lot on
Right.
his body. Uh, I and Vihari had a hamstring problem injury. Must have been obvious pain, but he battled on like Bahubali. You know, so he showed great strength, physical strength, and strength of character and courage. And I think what I found actually Ashwin more impressive because he's not a top order batsman, but
Right.
Vihari is. But Ashwin, the great quality, there were two actually. The way he played Lion, he played him the best in the match. I think Sanjay
Mhm.
Manjrekar made this point, and I completely agree with him. He seemed to read Lion's mind before the guy bowled the ball,
Absolutely.
what he's going to do. So he was decisively forward or back, read the turn well. You know, I mean, virtually gave no opportunity for Lion on the fifth day track. The other was the way he faced the fast bowlers. Yes, he got peppered with the short stuff, got hit, this, that, and the other, but he never flinched from getting behind the line. Now you can end up becoming. He had a couple of leading edges. It could when you bat 44 overs, it can happen. Some luck, undoubtedly, but to get behind the line of the ball every time to ensure that you don't end up playing alongside and give catching practice to the
Mhm.
slips or on the onside and give it to forward short leg required a lot of mental strength. And his upbringing as a batsman in league cricket and his early years of cricket, he was an opening batsman. So that came into very good use here. I think more than anything else, the guy had, he was grinding his teeth and saying, whatever happens, I'm not getting out. And he showed it. And I think one of the things that the Australians made a mistake, I think, one was tactics in the bowling. I think, yes, short pitch delivery was a threat, but it was overdone to the extent that, once these batsmen had settled down and they could sway out of the line and they didn't have to play every ball, while the need was for them to make sure that they play every ball and therefore induce a
Absolutely.
chance. The other was how he was sledged by no less than Tim Payne, and he gave it back to him, and didn't take it lying down quietly. I think what's happened in this match in this series, in fact, in Ashwin's case, is become a very strong influence of how this team is performing. He's picked
Mhm.
up 12 wickets. He's put up this sterling batting display. He was the first to go out. I mean, amongst the first to go out and talk about the racial slurs, alleged racial slurs against Mohammad Siraj. He talked about it in the press conference without pulling his punches. So he's a man of strong opinions. He's also a very senior pro. He knows that what he says will be listened to, and he also knows that how he thinks can make a contribution to India's game plan. I think that's really the important part.
Absolutely, and he's definitely become one of the leaders in the side, right? As opposed to just
Of
looking at him
course,
as a bowling all rounder, he's one of those senior figures, and so his influence on the team definitely rubs off on some of the younger players.
most certainly, yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. I want to talk briefly about the pitch. There were a couple of schools of thought that I heard. There were some commentators who talked about the fact that you expected the pitch to wear down, but from an Australian standpoint, it was disappointing that the pitch didn't wear down, and it wasn't. It became too easy to bat on. But then Shane Warne had a slightly contrarian view, and in commentary, he talked about the fact that the pitch was still doing a bit on the fifth day, but it was the Indian batsmen, the likes of Rishabh Pant, Ashwin, Hanuma Vihari, as well as Cheteshwar Pujara, who were actually adept at playing those deliveries that were actually doing a bit. What did you make of that fifth day pitch at the SCG?
Well, I'll tend to agree with Shane Warne. I mean, look, the pitch was slow. It didn't really crumble. There was no, deadly turn or bounce or rip or nip of the pitch for the spinners, or crevices coming onto the pitch where the fast bowlers would hit the deck and the ball could do anything. None of that was
Mhm.
there. Early on, if you didn't get your eye in, you could struggle. Batsmen who played long enough then got used to the nature of the pitch, the pace of the pitch, and the bounce of the pitch, and could survive for long periods, as we saw in the match today. Having
Mhm.
said that, I think it was a game not just about skill, but it was a battle of nerves on the last day, certainly. It's how well you could handle pressure, because you can get hustled, you can give up, you can say, Arey, yaar, Rane bhi out ho gaya. Now, Pant and Pujara could have been saying, what is the chance to survive now, and let's play some strokes and get out. No, they played strokes, but they played strokes in the way that was trying to turn the match around. And then both of them got out quite swiftly within a few overs of
Right.
each other. So again, it seemed, look, 45, almost half a day remaining, and then how do you last this day, and especially against Nathan Lyon and all that chat going on from the Aussie players. But they handled it. They handled this pressure superbly, and this is what I think. I keep going back, the self belief, the pride of saying, I mean, look at it this way, Anubhav. You had one terrible hour at Adelaide, 1 hour,
Right. Hmm.
and that cost you the test match. That was a match
Hmm.
which India should have actually won, having
That's right.
taken a lead, and that was a far worse wicket than this, you know.
Hmm.
53-run lead, which was squandered because you were bowled out for 36. And that's something which will happen once in 50, 60 years, that a team, your team will get bowled out for 50 or less or 60 or less. It's not likely to happen, maybe for the rest of my life at least, to see an Indian team getting bowled out for something like that. It happened. And you were stung, and you were, I think, stunned as to what has happened. But then to recover so swiftly and come back and turn things around so dramatically, I think all credit to the Indian team and the players. I think sometimes we are all cricket lovers, but we also critics, and we tend to kind of sometimes split hairs and say ye acha nahi, wo acha nahi, ye nahi acha hai. But you have to give it to these guys. Yeah. I mean, they're playing with virtually a team which is at 70% strength or even less now going ahead. And they won a match and they saved a match. And this is heroic. I can't think of too many instances like this,
Absolutely.
especially playing overseas. At home, we've had the Kolkata test of 2001 when we won that match, turned it around, went on to win the series. Fantastic. One of the greatest wins. But overseas, in these kind of situations to win, I can't think of, I'm jogging my mind. I can't think of, maybe Chandrasekhar 6 for 38 in 1971. That comes to mind because England were a very good team then. But not recovering from a 36 all out and going on to do, finish like this.
Absolutely. And you spoke about self belief, and self belief being an antidote to the pressure that the Indian team has been experiencing. Do you think there was extra pressure on Hanuma Vihari, given the fact that there was lots of speculation about his place in the side? Of course, not having been in the best of forms, failed in the first test, failed in the second test match, but the fact that he grinded it out, stuck it out there, and although he might be sidelined in all probability, but he's going to be sidelined because of an injury as opposed to because of a lack of form. So even though he's going out, at least he can go out, with his head held up high.
Yeah, I think obviously there was pressure. When you don't get runs, there is going to be pressure. There was pressure on Prithvi Shaw, there was pressure on Mayank Agarwal. So why should it be different for Hanuma Vihari? There was even pressure on Ajinkya Rane and Cheteshwar Pujara. So,
Right.
I mean, those are stellar players. You don't drop them on one or two failures. But somebody who's not yet a kind of a cemented fixture in the Indian team like Hanuma Vihari, obviously there'll be enormous pressure. And I think that's why, even for him, great show of, strength of character. Uh, the physical injury apart, the pressure of saving a match, knowing that actually you might not be there in the next match
Hmm.
because of injury or otherwise. That
Right.
requires very strong motivation.
Absolutely. Ayaz, now, turning our attention to the fourth test match that's going to take place at the Gabba. India, of course, rife with injuries. You have Jadeja, who's going to be missing out. Hanuma Vihari, in all probability, going to be missing out as well. Now, that creates lots of, unwanted problems for the Indian team. What combination do you think they should go with? What combination should they consider for the fourth test match?
I don't think they have too much choice. I mean, because the match is at Brisbane. Now, see, unfortunately, the problem is even Hanuma Vihari, if he's injured, you don't have an option of a second part-time bowler because he
Hmm.
was, used also as somebody who will come and bowl 4 overs or 5 overs of off spin,
That's
just
right.
to give breathing time to the fast bowlers or some of the others. Even that opportunity is lost. So I don't know what the tactic will be because Brisbane, will it be enough to have just 4 bowlers? That is Ravi Ashwin and 3 fast bowlers. Uh, Bumrah, Siraj, and Saini stroke Thakur, or whatever the
Mhm.
combination there. And now we are in the stage where actually, if you don't lose the match, I'm not saying win the match, but if you don't lose the match, if it's another draw, you retain the Border Gavaskar trophy.
That's right.
So, do you want to then increase your batting heft to ensure because Australia's attack is at full strength? And this is now their last option to regain the the trophy. Otherwise, it's one more series that they've not been able to get the better of India. So I see, now, and the other issue is Shubman Gill. Now, if you have to take 2 batsmen, one for Jadeja and one for Hanuma Vihari, then there's Prithvi Shaw and Mayank Agarwal. Nobody else is
Hmm.
remaining. KL Rahul
Hmm.
has also gone back.
That's right.
Or you bring in Saha and play Pant as a batsman, as only a
That's right.
specialist batsman, and then you need one more player. So, and who do you use? Would you Prithvi or Mayank? And will they then bat in the middle order or will they be openers? And if they're
That's right.
openers, then who comes into the middle order? Because
That's
the
right.
Gill Rohit Sharma partnership is looking so good, doing so
That's right.
well.
Yep.
So there
Hmm.
are many issues that are to be resolved for the Indian team. But at the moment, I think they can, enjoy their evening and say it's a job that we've done extremely well and we deserve not just a pat on the back, but maybe a night out on the tiles. I mean, if
Absolutely.
COVID permitting in wherever they are.
Absolutely. And Ayaz, you spoke about this briefly at the start of the show. Your prediction going into the final test match, you mentioned that, this was a moral victory for India. So India definitely have the tails up. So you perhaps would say India favorites, maybe just edging it going into the fourth test?
Look, on paper, Australia would be favourites because of the weekend batting and stuff like that. This was a heroic effort. So you don't expect Ashwin and number 6 batsmen to keep batting 44 overs and stave off defeat every time. You need the top order to click more consistently. But and the pitch and Brisbane, where Australia's record is, fantastic. So there is a hardship quotient to it. But I think so 2 things have happened. India have shown a lot of character, a lot of mettle. They've got under the skin of the Aussies. They're not alive. The Aussies are losing the plot, batting or bowling against this Indian team for some reason or the other. The other is that the Indians will have inspired themselves. So they become model victors in this match and a psychological hurdle for Australia to cross over. So it won't be, unless the batting is this kind of collapses, India's batting. I don't think Australia will have it too easy. And that's what you want to see. I mean, whatever the result, I think this Indian team has done exceptionally well already to earn the accolades which are coming their way. And I think that will spur them on to do, some at least put up a real good fight in the last match And who knows, with Bumrah and Siraj and Saini not showing any, no, certainly not Bumrah, but even
Mhm.
Siraj and Saini doing rather well and troubling the
Absolutely.
Aussie batsman. Ashwin, 12 wickets in the series so far. The Aussie batsmen won't have it too easy against the Indian attack.
Absolutely. And do you think this was, this test match was another nail in the coffin of the idea of having 4-day tests? Brilliant advert for classic 5-day test match cricket.
I must say, yes. I mean, if you look at this test match in isolation, but if you look at the earlier two matches, you would say, hey, it ended in 3 days and 4 days, or less than that, less than 3 days and less than 4 days. So, I mean, there are pros and cons to it. I think that it's not that you take a sweeping decision that 4-day test matches. A lot of things have to be built in if you want to do a 4-day test match. Like, for instance, in my opinion, going up to about 105 or 110 overs a day. So extending a 6 hour day into a 6.5 hour day, but being diligent about the number of overs bowled, not just finding teams. So what happens if you add 20 more overs a day? You get almost an extra day in 4 days in terms of overs.
That's right.
So the idea
That's right.
about the 4-day test match is not to shrink playing time, it's to shrink time for the spectators to give up something else and come for the match, which they may not do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But if you have a
Beautifully.
match like this, 5 days, I mean, you wanted a 6th day also. If
Right.
if Pant and Pujara had kept going, imagine you want spill over into the 6th day, maybe half an hour, and then go and win the match.
Right, right. Beautiful. So that was a brilliant advert for not just 5-day test cricket, but test cricket in general. Edge of the seat action, squeaky bump time from start to finish. Thank you so much to Ayaz, and thank you so much to all our viewers for having joined us for another episode of Cricket Pundits. Do join us again on the eve of the fourth test match on the 14th of January as we'll build up to that. We'll have Mandira Lalvani back in a virtual studio. Until next time, take care, enjoy the festivities, enjoy the celebrations in the aftermath of this match saving heroic performance from India. And we look forward to seeing you on the networks again very soon. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and cheers.
Thank you, Anubhav.